Hey buddy, want to buy a free report? Probably not, but you do want the report. Why? Because you want the juicy good information that's in it. And that's why we want to talk about content marketing. Welcome to episode 33 of the Cheeky Sales Coach, Content Marketing. First, let's define content marketing. Content marketing is very simply trading ideas for attention. You may or may not realize that you are exposed to content marketing all the time. Hey, you want to attend my free webinar about content marketing? Ta-da! The webinar is the content that draws you in. So I hold webinars so that people will pay attention to me. I put out videos which I hope are useful so that people will pay attention. I hand out free reports so I get people on my mailing list, and on and on and on. Content marketing is the second most powerful tool ever invented for getting your marketing and advertising message out to the public. Side note, the first, the greatest of all, is what we've already covered when we talked about direct mail marketing. Direct mail is number one, content marketing is number two. We put content marketing squarely into marketing and not sales because it is not generally used to actually ask people for their money. If I want to sell you a book, I'm selling a book. If I want to give you a book in hopes that you will engage me in a process, well then, it is the engagement in the process that I'm trying to get you to do, and so I'm not asking you for your money right away. Remember the difference between marketing and sales. I'll give you two examples of where content marketing has worked very well for me. The first one is my 68-point checklist. Google 68-point checklist, and my stuff is all over the place. You literally can't miss it. So there's that. I've been doing the 68-point checklist for years and years and years, just telling people from the front of the stage or wherever, go get my 68-point checklist. If you're trying to set up a server, that's a good place to start. If you want to figure out, what kinds of things you should be looking at in an audit, this is not the ultimate list, but it's a place to start, right? On and on and on, I've had many opportunities to say, get the 68-point checklist, and I've updated it several times. So, what we have now is not the original version, it's a much newer version. Now, how do you get the 68-point checklist? Well, you could scrape it off of my blog, which is kind of a pain in the neck, or eventually you're going to find that it's available on my store for free. But to go through the free process, you also have to register. You have to give me your name and your email address. And yes, you can opt out of the email, but most people don't. So the result is I grow my mailing list by having that one thing out there. A second way that I use content marketing all the time is I have a series of videos over on my other YouTube channel where I talk about standard operating procedures, SOPs, for small and medium businesses. So I have SOP for SMB.com. I will, in the next week or so, put up my 300th SOP video for managed service providers. The result is there are people who watch that video every week. There are people who find that video after years and say, oh, this was really helpful. The single most popular video on that channel after more than 10 years is a standard operating procedure video on the roles and responsibilities of a service manager. People search for that a lot, they find it occasionally, and they watch it. And so in the last month, that one video has had more than 1,000 views. And so those people might subscribe to the channel, they might go buy a book, they might somehow work their way into my marketing funnel. So you see, that's how social content helps you to market. So when we talk about trading an idea for attention, I'm going to give out some information, that's the idea, and I'm hoping to gain the attention of people who then eventually will work their way into my marketing funnel. Now, here are 6 or 7 things you need to know about content marketing. Thing number 1 we basically just covered, and that is the definition that content marketing is trading ideas for attention. All good. Thing number 2, you have to decide how widely you want to distribute a piece of information. Now, my bias is I think it should be as wide as possible, but you can do whatever you want. Some people make sure that it has a very narrow distribution so it maintains a certain value. Some people charge for their content and then hope that people will buy even more. That's not really the same as content marketing. That's more of a sales technique. A very common kind of content marketing is to have some handout or giveaway that you spread as widely as possible. So, I have a thing called the absolutely unbreakable rules of service delivery. I want that on every bulletin board in America. I want it to be widely spread. I have a book by the same title, and I have a 1-page PDF in there that I include simply so that everybody who owns the book can put it on their bulletin board. But I also have lots of ways that I distribute this to people. I have it as a handout whenever I make a presentation. I print them out and give them to people when I'm speaking in a room, right? On and on and on. I want everybody to have that. And of course, it's got my website at the bottom. It's got contact information so that when people put it on their bulletin board, there's my marketing right there in front of them. You may also say, well, for example, I want to record a webinar and have it on demand. And all I ask is that people give me their email address. Again, they get on the mailing list, they get into the funnel. Eventually, you're going to do additional marketing to them. You have to decide what the distribution looks like and then simply execute. Number 3, a really great thing to do with content marketing is to put it in your newsletter, to put it in your advertising, actually. Be able to give this information to people so that you become the source of good information, good ideas. Ultimately, what you want is to become a resource for other people. Once you become a resource for other people, whether it's in your newsletter or anywhere else, people will come back to you for additional information on the same topic. One time, somebody gave me this interesting feedback as a speaker. They said, if you don't have your stuff at the back of the room, you are doing people a disservice if they liked your presentation. Because if people like their presentation, they're going to want more. So you have to be prepared to give them the more, and that's a piece of your content marketing. Give them some, and then if they like it, make sure there's a path to give them more. Thing number 4, make it evergreen. What does that mean? Well, an evergreen piece of information is something that never expires. It never gets old. A great example is always when holidays come around, there's always a story on the radio about how to cook turkey and where to get the tips on turkey and how to do this and that, right? There's standard things that come again and again and again. So, for example, I used to always have in my newsletter when I had a technology company, keyboard shortcuts. People love keyboard shortcuts. They never use them, but they love them. And so I would put together lists of keyboard shortcuts. Here's the fastest way to get around Microsoft Word. And so I put all the keyboard shortcuts. People would clip that out and stick it on their bulletin board, but they knew it came from me. And then I'd have keyboard shortcuts for Windows and keyboard shortcuts for Excel and keyboard shortcuts for Adobe, right? And on and on and on. People love that stuff, even if they never use it. It's not your fault if they don't use it. It's good information, it never expires, and you can use it again and again and again People will never get tired of it. So try to create an evergreen handout that you can use for a long, long time. Again, my 68-point checklist is an example of that. It's been updated a couple of times, but basically, that thing's about 15 years old. Thing number 5, make it shareable. In other words, let other people help you promote your business. If you give something to somebody in a PDF format, don't isolate it or keep it encrypted or any of that kind of stuff. Let them share it so that other people can print off that PDF and have your marketing information in front of their face. One of the concepts that's evolved in the last, 20 years with the internet is the idea that things can spread like a virus, what Seth Godin calls the idea virus. And basically, what we do with social media is we want to share information and then have other people share it again and again and again and again. And so if you've got something that's got your branding, your logo, your contact information, and it gets shared again and again and again, that's all good. You haven't lost anything if other people are helping you spread the word that you are a source of good information. It is important that you have your copyright on there. It is important that you have your contact information embedded in a way where it's hard for people to remove. You want to be given the credit for the work that you've done and for the fact that you've actually provided usable information. But once that's in place, share it as widely as you possibly can and let your followers help you share it even more. Thing number 6, use it again and again and again. If you've got content that's evergreen, if you've basically got a long play, then there's no reason that you shouldn't also share things again and again. Often people who create information make the mistake of believing that once it's out there, you've said it, it's been said, and it doesn't need to be repeated, and people are going to be annoyed if you repeat the same thing. But if you repeat the same thing once a year, A, nobody will notice, B, it will still be useful, and C, you don't have to come up with new content. So think about ways that you can put it on a YouTube and on a blog post and in your newsletter and maybe in a white paper, and different ways that you can use the same content again and again. If you are seen as the person who really gets that content, who really understands that specific piece of information, you become a resource. Once again, people want to gravitate to you. If they found it useful, then they found you useful. And ultimately, that's what you want to do. So share everything in at least 3 different formats in order to keep the goodness going. Thing number 7, let me just give you an example from my own work. So I wrote a series of blog posts on standard operating procedures. They became about 70% of what eventually became a 4-volume set of books on standard operating procedures. Then, once I had all of that content, I started making videos. So now I've got the video version of the standard operating procedures, some of which started out as blog posts. I created a website just to organize all this so that there's a website, sopforsmb.com, that lists the SOP, points to the original blog post, and points to a video that's related to that. So you can consume it again and again as many times as you want. And then I found that I'm creating more SOPs, some of them on the blog, some of them in videos. So eventually there might be a revision of those books simply because there's more content. The point is that content should be used again and again and again, and that people who follow you will gobble it up in every version that you give it to them. So become a content machine and it will serve you very well. Stay tuned next week for episode 34. We're going to talk about content and different kinds of content and where it fits in your marketing funnel. But for now, have a truly spectacular week, and I wish you the best of luck in everything you do. Call to action. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss a thing.